On June 13th, 2020, the Seattle Times reported, in the early 1980s, when a terrifying new disease began striking down gay men, information was hard to come by. The Centers for Disease Control didn't hold televised briefings, mainstream media paid scant attention, and the internet didn't exist. So members of Seattle's tight-knit gay community would snap up the weekly editions of the Seattle Gay News. Editor George Bacon made it his mission to provide as much detail as he and his staff could gather about the rapidly spreading scourge called AIDS. Later, as the toll began to mount, they were the first to honor the lives of the victims with page after page of free obituaries. But, according to the Seattle Times on June 13th, Mr. Bacon, 78, who died June 7th at his desk in the paper's Capitol Hill office, had an impact that extended far beyond the newspaper circulation. For those of us who knew George, these words are just the tip of the iceberg. He was a game changer. He was always pushing for more, pushing harder to make sure that change was made and that change was possible, and that he set up the next generation of advocates, of activists, of publishers. And he leaves behind a grieving community who loved George Bacon.
My name is George Bacon, that's B-A-K-A-N. I am the owner-publisher of the Seattle Gay News, a role I've had for over 30 years. I was a pre-World War II baby. I was born in 41. My birthday's in October. And my mother always used to talk about how the war started a few months after I was born in December. I'm a Seattle native. I was born right here in the city of Seattle in a hospital that no longer exists. My family had moved here from in the Depression era, and this is where my mother and father met and married, and that's where I was born.
My name is Sherry Harris, and when I was elected to the Seattle City Council as the first openly gay person on the council and the first African-American woman, I owed the environment that I was able to run and win in a large part to my good friend and fellow activist, George Bacon. George was one of the most influential advocates for LGBTQ rights in Seattle's history, and he was a stand for the rights of all people, including African Americans. George's compassion extended to more than just minority groups. He advocated for homeless people and other marginalized communities. He was a grassroots person and always on the front line, bringing leadership, resources, and inclusion to all of the issues. From equal rights legislation to the AIDS epidemic to the many, many initiatives we fought for or against, George was right there in every way, fighting the good fight and keeping the Seattle Gay News involved and making the difference. George, I love you so much and I miss you. Thank you for the life that you lived, the work you have done, and for the accomplishments that you have achieved. We will never forget you and your contribution to Seattle, Washington State, and the world. You are in history and in our hearts, now and forever.
We eventually ended up moving to the farm, and I went over to the farm to help that summer of '59. Then I came back to Seattle to go to the University of Washington. And I can tell you exactly when it happened, when I got off the bus. I finally said, I'm here by myself, and now I'm going to figure it out. And I stashed my stuff in the locker at the bus station, 8th and Stewart, good old Greyhound, and I went down to First Avenue, where I'd heard all the stories for all the years, and I knew there was something there that would be exciting and interesting. I didn't know quite what. But sure enough, I figured I got into a couple of dive bars, even though I was underage. People didn't care. There were the dime movie arcades, which were very cruisy, depending on the movie, and all sorts of things. And so that's when I finally said to myself, now you can explore this side of your life with impunity because there's no family nearby. You're on your own. You're in Seattle. And now's the time to check it out.
Hi, this is Tom Rasmussen. I want to say a few words of deep appreciation for George Bacon and all that he did for the community. He created a wonderful newspaper for the LGBT community, Anyone who wrote an article or had a photograph who wanted to submit it to the newspaper probably got it in. The SGN, created by George Bacon, included articles about protests, urging people to protest, politicians, drag queens, underwear parties at various bars, discos, you name it. If it was related to the LGBT community, it was in the SGN. George, this is my first Pride without you, and I'll really miss you.
Well, it seems like there was no choice.
Well, I think there were choices, but they didn't seem to be positive choices. And I had the benefit of a very good mother and father, growing up in an excellent childhood, and an extended family beyond them, aunts and uncles. And I think that really led me to a sort of a solid belief that the family is a good thing, not a bad thing, and one of your goals in life would be to ultimately have your own family. I don't think that consciously there was any ability to reshape that to say, well, you can do a family living with another man or whatever. It was the traditional family, the model that was in front of us at all times. And so I think that part of what happened, even though you might discover that you were very attracted to other men, or if you were a lesbian to other women, I don't know that you planned that you were going to establish a family in that dimension. And despite all the pervasiveness and understanding yourself, there was still the theory that you might ultimately establish a traditional family. And that's what happened in my case. After I got out of the Navy, I was I'm 27 years old, because I was a student until I was 25, and that's when they drafted me. I kept saying, now, this is all very interesting. What do I do? Because I really wanted to settle down. It's kind of a natural phenomenon. I think a lot of people in their late 20s begin thinking of settling down. And I couldn't see that this could be successfully done with another man. I'm being very honest with you. And so I began kind of looking around, and I met a woman that I had known since childhood. Our families were friends, but we hadn't seen each other for many, many years. She had never married. She was a beautiful, beautiful woman, professional woman. And we started dating and fell quite madly in love. And I married her. And that sounds amazing, but that's the way it often worked in that era. And we had a very successful marriage for about 12 years. I have a daughter named Angela. I'm still good friends with my ex-wife, Sylvia. And that's just the way things happened in that era. Because you didn't feel, and particularly in my case, that you had the real option of forming this relationship with another man that would give you what you thought you needed to do with your life. And I tried. This to be very honest, I tried. I had a number of, boyfriends or friends, and they didn't want to settle down. And it was almost a taboo topic once you talked about, well, can we do something with the relationship which involves something that's more permanent and has some stability? And that was kind of a, no, we can't. And I never could quite figure out why, because it made such sense to me, but it didn't seem possible.
So as a married man, you were happy?
Yes. But I was also very lucky. I found an exceptional woman that I was truly attracted to, and I told her, I find men appealing as well, and I will share her comment. She says, well, everywhere we go, gay men stare at you, so I know that. I always said, gee, But anyway, the point is that I think my circumstance in many ways might have been exceptional because I happened to, again, be lucky and had the right woman that I could construct a real tangible relationship with and move into the sense of having the family that I thought was essential.
So, well, it's without George, I wouldn't be here making this video. But I also wouldn't, I just don't know where I'd be as a person. We met at a World AIDS Day event at the end of 2010. I was a recent transplant to Seattle from Indiana, from the Midwest. And I used to work for a newspaper in Indiana, so I was really excited to meet the publisher of, Seattle Gay News. we hit it off right away, liked each other. I think he liked me more when after I started working for him and coming back with pictures of scantily clad men. But he was the first person to really believe in me as a new photographer, and he supported me. He was an advocate for me, and I was introduced to community for the first time in my life. And even though I'm a straight guy, it's the only community I've ever known, and this community has held me up and given me the confidence needed to really succeed as an artist and documenter. And he was like a grandpa to me, and I always felt special in the impact he had on my life. And in the recent days, just reading all the eulogies and tributes to him on social media has made me realize that he had that impact on a lot of people.
We stand on the shoulders of those who came before us, and that's one reason why we want to do this show today, which we're calling Legends. And so, George, we consider you
I think
a
it's really a good idea, and we should continue doing that because the list is actually quite lengthy. Way before, early on, people had these instincts to do some good things, and they took a road, and that was the beginning of community. The Pride Committee is very important because remember, in the early days, it was very community based. It was everybody participated. It was free. There was no cost. We went up to Volunteer Park, which we were very familiar with. It had a great rally. It hadn't emerged into this great big downtown spectacular thing that absorbs millions of dollars and is very costly and on and on. And I think that would be another interesting conversation. The early Pride events and how important they were for bringing people together. Lots of people in the closet. This is a very big thing for some folks to appear publicly in a gay pride parade who were not out to anybody.
We'll bring you back for that conversation because that's a conversation I want to have. But we have to wrap up now. But I just wanted to say thank you so much for all the work you do for the community, George. You're a treasure.
It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure. I love to reminisce a bit and talk, and you guys are doing a great idea. Get within modern era and do some podcasts and tell the stories. There's certainly lots of them to be told.
Exactly.